You were never supposed to hear this part. Not yet. But if you're listening now, something in you already knows it's time. Let's begin with the truth no one warned you about. You did not stumble into that relationship by accident. You didn't fall for the wrong person. And you weren't naive, weak, or foolish for staying longer than you should have. The truth is far more unnerving. You were placed there, not be destroyed, but to be revealed. Because some relationships don't enter your life to give you love. They enter to expose what you believe love requires you to sacrifice. And if you're honest, deep down you've always known something about that connection didn't feel normal. It felt consuming, magnetic, heavy in a way that was almost spiritual. It didn't just touch your heart. It reached into your identity. You didn't simply fall in love. You slowly disappeared. And that is not an accident. Most people believe narcissistic relationships are about attraction, trauma bonding, or chemistry gone wrong. But what if that's only the surface? What if the real reason you were pulled into that dynamic is because something inside you was waking up and the awakening required friction? Here's the uncomfortable truth. You weren't chosen because you were weak. You were chosen because you were bright. Narcissistic personalities are not drawn to emptiness. They are drawn to fullness, to warmth, to empathy, to depth, to people who can carry emotional weight without dropping it. They sense that before you ever say a word. You carried presence. You carried intuition. You carried emotional intelligence, compassion, and the ability to see beyond masks. And people who live behind masks feel exposed around people like you. So they move closer, not to love you, but to regulate themselves through you. At first, it felt like recognition, like someone finally saw you. But what they were really seeing was a resource. Your calm regulated their chaos. Your reassurance stabilized their insecurity. Your patience compensated for their volatility. You became the emotional environment they could survive inside of. And because you were kind, you didn't notice when love slowly turned into labor. That's how it begins. Not with cruelty, but with intensity. Not with abuse, but with intensity dressed as intimacy. You felt chosen, special, needed, and that feeling is addictive when you've spent your life being the strong one, the understanding one, the one who holds everything together. But here's the part that changes everything. The moment you started needing something back, the energy shifted. Suddenly you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. The same qualities they once adored became accusations. And you started shrinking, not because you wanted to, but because you were trying to preserve the connection. That's when confusion set in. You began questioning your instincts, replaying conversations, rewriting your needs so they sounded more reasonable. You thought love required more patience, but what you were really doing was abandoning yourself to keep the peace. And your soul felt it. That tightness in your chest, that exhaustion you couldn't explain, that sense of losing your footing, those weren't signs of weakness. They were warnings. Because here's what no one tells you. Your body recognizes betrayal long before your mind accepts it, and your spirit knew this wasn't love. This was survival. Still, you stayed, because you believed something beautiful could be salvaged, because you thought if you just loved harder, communicated better, forgave more, stayed softer, it would change. But here's the truth that breaks people open. Love does not heal someone who refuses to face themselves. It only reveals how far they're willing to go to avoid accountability. And eventually, you reach a point where something inside you quietly said, "This is costing me too much." That moment, the moment you began to feel the weight, was not weakness. It was awakening, because the relationship was never meant to last. It was meant to show you what you tolerate when you forget your worth. And that realization is devastating and sacred. You see, not all lessons arrive gently. Some come wrapped in confusion, because clarity wouldn't break through otherwise. You were placed in that dynamic because you were ready to confront something ancient within yourself. A pattern, a story you learned long before this relationship ever began. Maybe it was growing up needing to be the emotionally mature one. Maybe love was conditional. Maybe affection came with unpredictability. Maybe approval had to be earned. So when you met someone who mirrored that emotional rhythm, it felt familiar, not safe, familiar. And familiarity can feel like fate when you don't know another language of love yet. That's why the connection felt destined. But destiny doesn't always mean permanence. Sometimes destiny means exposure. And the moment you began to wake up, the dynamic couldn't survive. You started setting boundaries, not loudly, not dramatically, but energetically. You stopped explaining yourself so much. You stopped chasing clarity. You stopped bending your truth to maintain peace. And that's when everything shifted. The relationship became unstable because it was built on you carrying more than your share. When you stopped carrying it, it collapsed. And here's the part people rarely say out loud. You didn't lose them. They lost access to you. They lost the mirror that reflected worth back to them. They lost the emotional regulator that kept their inner chaos quiet. That's why they reacted the way they did. Not because they love you deeply, but because your absence exposed something they didn't want to face. And still you grieved, not because you wanted them back, but because you mourned the version of yourself that believed love required pain. You grieved the hope you had invested. You grieved the future you imagined. You grieved the version of you that kept trying. And grief is not weakness. It's integration. Because grief is how the nervous system releases a story it no longer needs to survive. Slowly, something new began to emerge. Space, silence, clarity. At first, it felt empty because chaos had trained your body to mistake intensity for aliveness. But over time, the quiet became comforting. You began to hear your own thoughts again. You noticed your shoulders relaxing. Your breath deepened. You stopped bracing for emotional impact. And that's when the truth landed gently but firmly. Peace doesn't chase you. It waits for you to stop running from yourself. And then something remarkable happened. You stopped needing closure from the person who hurt you because you finally understood what the experience was for. It wasn't about them becoming better. It was about you becoming conscious. Conscious of your worth. Conscious of your limits. Conscious of the difference between love and attachment. You realize that love doesn't demand self-erasure. That real connection doesn't require you to perform, prove, or bleed. And you saw something even deeper. You were never meant to stay in that story. You were meant to outgrow it. The relationship wasn't failure. It was an initiation. An initiation into discernment, into self-respect, into a kind of strength that doesn't shout, it stands. Now you move differently. You don't chase intensity. You choose alignment. You don't romanticize chaos. You value consistency. You don't confuse chemistry with safety. You understand that love should feel grounding, not disorienting. And perhaps the most powerful shift of all, you no longer need to be chosen. You choose yourself. That's what this was always about. Not punishment, not loss, not rejection, transformation. You were not placed in that person's life to save them. You were placed there to wake yourself up. And now that you're awake, something inside you knows this is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a different one, a quieter one, a truer one where love doesn't cost you your peace. And here is a final truth most people never reach. The relationship didn't break you. It revealed you. And the version of you standing here now, clearer, stronger, more discerning, is not an accident. It is the result. So the question isn't why you met them. The real question is this. Now that you see clearly, who are you becoming next?